Hello, welcome to the Real Estate Regroup Show. I am your host, LJ Walker, a real estate investor helping you realize your dream of owning a home or investing in one. Today, we're going to be talking about how to choose a country. You see, I've been going to different forums, and many people are frustrated and angry with what's going on here in the United States. The increased level of racism, police brutality, it's a bit overwhelming, to be quite honest with you, and I do understand. Let me let you know this. I have gone to 63 different countries. I've actually have lived in another country, although I was a child, in addition to the United States. And I will tell you that racism, unfortunately, is not something that can be avoided. It exists everywhere. Police brutality does seem as though it's more prevalent here than elsewhere. However, you have to realize that every event that happens on this planet is not recorded and is not reported. So it's not easy to say whether or not the US leads the pack in that area or not as well. However, I do believe that there are places that are way more peaceful than the United States. I do believe that there are places, I know that there are places where there is less racism to deal with. So let's delve into this a little bit further for those of you who are really contemplating leaving. Think about your citizenship. Do you want to stay a U.S. citizen, or are you willing to give up your citizenship? The reason why you want to think about these things is because, number one, some countries do not let U.S. citizens own land unless they marry the person from that country. So that could be an issue for some of us. The other issue is that in some countries, Gambia was looking at Blacksit's video, where you can own property, but after a certain period of time, you have to sell that property back to a citizen of that country. It does not get handed down to your children like it does here in the United States. You see? Next, your taxes. If you are a United States citizen, you decide that you want to keep it, you will be taxed on your income. Even though the income is made overseas, you still have to pay it. Okay? Now, you might be able to get away with setting up an LLC overseas or by filing for a foreign tax credit so that you're not taxed twice. But even though you won't be taxed twice, you might still have to pay a percentage, a smaller percentage, but you will have to pay a percentage back to the United States of America, you see. And then going back to real estate, when it comes to doing repairs on your property, repairs are always tax deductible. Improvements are not always the case. Let's talk about what the difference is between a repair and an improvement. A repair is, let's say, the plumbing pipe bursts. That's a repair. That's tax deductible. An improvement would be putting an awning on a property. That might not always necessarily be tax deductible. Also, if you live in certain states, if your driver's license is from a particular state, or even your passport is from a particular state, you might have to pay state taxes as well as federal income taxes if you decide to keep your U.S. citizenship. Next thing that you want to look into, well, a criteria for me, it might not necessarily be one for you, and that's language. Me personally, I would prefer to stay in a country that speaks English. But I will tell you this, being that I have family that lives in Jamaica, Barbados, I know that even though we speak English, we speak it a little differently. And to be quite honest with you, I don't understand everything that all of my relatives say when they get together. There are times when I feel out of the loop. I do understand patois to a certain extent, but there are times when they just talk entirely too fast, even for me. Now, when it comes to the South, some people in Georgia, which is where my father is from, and then also North Carolina, I have a very hard time understanding what they're saying. So that is something that you will have to get adjusted to no matter where you are. Along with language comes body language. Body language also differs from country to country. It doesn't mean the same thing. So you'll have to adjust your mind and also your body as well. Certain stances that you may take may come off as being offensive to them, just like some of the stances that you take may come off as being offensive to you. Okay. And that leads us into culture. We can be the same race. That doesn't mean that we are of the same culture. Okay. The next thing, type of government. You may want to look into how their government is run and will it be compatible to the way you want to live and the way you want to do business. Next, consider transportation. I know here living in New York City, we're relatively spoiled. I can pretty much just go across the street and get whatever it is that I want, or a block or two by walking. But I also have buses and trains and taxis. There are certain countries where you don't have all of that, where you will have to be totally 100% relying on a car. So consider that. Next, religion. Some countries are not just dominant by one particular religion, but that religion controls everything, including the government. And it may contradict whatever it is that you believe in. It may not tolerate your religion at all. So that definitely think about that. Next, as a woman, I have to think about sexism. There are certain countries where women don't have the same rights as men. We don't have the same opportunities as men. And we also may have to dress a certain way that men don't necessarily have to abide by. The next thing to consider is homosexuality. Homosexuality is not approved in all countries of this world. There are still places where you can get shot and killed and it'll be okay. There will be no consequences whatsoever. Here in America, that can happen as well. As a matter of fact, I think it actually happened the other day in Minneapolis. But there are people who are fighting in order for justice to be served for that particular individual. But you have to understand that in other countries, you may not be afforded that at all. Next, let's look at affordability. There are some countries that are actually more expensive than the United States. For example, Barbados. It's actually cheaper to buy some shoes on the internet and have them shipped down there than to actually buy locally from any of the stores down there. Next, you want to think about development and infrastructure. Me personally, with what I do, I heavily rely on the internet and on electricity. You have places, even to be honest, right here in the United States, like Vermont, that does not have good internet. at all. Okay. And you have some countries where internet just doesn't exist. That could be an issue. Another a big issue is that you have some countries where, in order to conserve power, they will shut down the electricity. If you are working on a 300-page document, like many of the people on my job do, that is definitely not acceptable and that will not go over well. So think about what your job requires before you choose a place. Next, opportunity. What opportunities are there? When considering a third world country to live in, it may be best to be an entrepreneur as opposed to a job seeker. Because as a job seeker, to a certain extent, you're taking the job away from the local people. That is, if they will even hire you, because they may have a preference for you being that you are an American, or they may not. It all depends. Next, you want to think about is safety and security. There are some countries that are war torn. There are other countries that are peaceful. Next thing you want to think about is healthcare. Healthcare in the United States may be okay, but it's definitely better than most. Look into how healthcare is run in that particular country. How much does it cost? What kind of aid is available? Disability, for those of you who are disabled, you may want to think about how the country's infrastructure is set up for those who suffer from whatever disability that you're suffering from. Next, pension and Social Security. Did you know that your Social Security is not acceptable everywhere? That's another thing to think of. In addition to that, there are some countries that don't give Social Security to their elderly at all. So let's say you want to move before it's retirement age. You want to move right now while you're still young and able to move about. You may want to just think about whether or not you want to live in a country that has Social Security or not. Next, finances. How is the financial system set up? Did you know that there are some countries in Africa where credit cards and debit cards do not exist? There are no ATM machines. Some countries just got them this year or late last year for the very first time. And then you have some countries, like, for example, last year when I went to Montenegro and also when I went to Croatia, there were certain credit card companies that they did not accept. So definitely review your finances and review how their financial system is set up before you go. Next, education. Now that many people work remotely and are learning remotely, education may not be that difficult. However, if you don't have the internet and if power is an issue, it can cause a strain on your children's education. Okay? And then lastly, the weather. What type of weather are you used to? Are you able to accommodate? Me personally, I have no problems with the snow. However, I had property in Georgia and it snowed for like 2 inches or so, and the whole city was shut down. They weren't ready or prepared for what came their way. Me, I'm used to it. I've seen 24 inches of snow. Okay. Now, hurricane, now that's a different story. People in Florida, many of them are used to the hurricane. Here in New York, we had Hurricane Sandy and Hurricane Irene. For the most part, many of us have overcome it, But we still, well, in particularly me, I've done what I can to prepare for it, but I'm not fully prepared for that particular weather. It's not something that I'm used to, you understand? So again, you may want to consider that when you are choosing a place to live. Anyway, guys, that is all that I have for you. Hopefully, what I've shared will help you make a wonderful transition. Please feel free to share this. Remember, each one, reach one, teach one. Bye for now. Until next time, have a good night.